She smiled at every neighbor, while sneaking into the HOA president's house across the street. And I smiled back, until the day I found the truth waiting in my mailbox. I'm Ethan Coleman, 37 years old, regional sales manager for a tech firm, which means I spend more time in airports than I do in my own kitchen. Strategic, quiet. I play the long game, in work, in marriage, in life. My wife, Rachel, she's 33. Stay-at-home mom, yoga on Tuesdays, HOA event planner, queen of the casual wine night. Blonde, sharp, charming, the kind of woman people envy from across the cul-de-sac. She knows exactly how to make people adore her and exactly how to use that against them. We have a daughter, Ivy, 10 years old. Smart as hell. Thinks we're the perfect family. Used to think that, anyway. Our street looks like something out of a home magazine. Perfect lawns, seasonal wreaths, everyone waving like it's still 1955. We hosted barbecues, shared Amazon deliveries, swapped stories about pest control. And all the while, Rachel smiled. She smiled at every neighbor, while sneaking into the HOA president's house across the street. Kurt Davis, 45, ex-military, HOA president for 6 years running. Always tan, always in charge. Divorcee with a thing for authority and younger women. The kind of man who tells you how to trim your hedges with a grin and a clipboard. And apparently, the kind of man my wife was willing to lie for. I found out the way most men do these days. Not through a confession, not through a fight, but through something small, something digital. It was late afternoon, mid-May. The air smelled like lawn chemicals and someone's cheap grill starter fluid. I was checking the mail, expecting junk, and that's when I saw it. A small black USB drive. No note. No label. Just one thing scratched into the side with something sharp. Watch me. I slipped it into my pocket. Didn't even mention it to Rachel when I walked in. She was setting the table, still in her workout clothes, like nothing in the world could shake her. HOA meeting tonight, she said casually. Kurt wants to go over the landscaping budget. Of course he does, I said, sitting down to eat. She smiled, took a sip of her wine, and crossed her legs just so. Like every movement had been rehearsed. Like this was a performance. She left just after 6:30. Kissed me goodbye. Said something about how we'd need to budget for new plants along the west wall. I watched her walk out the door. Then I waited. 10 minutes later, I was in my office, lights dimmed, laptop open. The USB drive booted instantly. No password. No folder name. Just 4 video files labeled only by date. The first one was grainy but clear enough. Rachel, walking up to Kurt Davis's house. Not the clubhouse. Not the HOA meeting space. His front door. She looked both ways like a bad actress in a spy movie. Then she walked right in without knocking. The timestamp, 6:53 p.m. Same time she was supposed to be reviewing vendor proposals with the board. The second clip? Same thing. Different night. Same damn routine. And the third one? This time, they were in the window. His living room. Close. Intimate. Her laugh muffled behind the glass, but unmistakable. She touched his shoulder. He leaned in. Their shadows became one. My stomach dropped. But I kept watching. I paused the 4th video halfway through. It was enough. I didn't get angry. Not yet. I didn't scream or storm out or call her a liar. I made a copy. Put the original USB in my gun safe. Wiped my prints off the plastic. Rachel came home just after 9. Complained about HOA politics, poured herself another glass of wine, then kissed me goodnight like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Because now I wasn't just a husband. I was a man with evidence. And I wasn't about to waste it. I waved to Kurt that morning. He waved back, like he didn't destroy my life. That's the thing about this neighborhood. Everyone smiles. We smile at block parties while our marriages rot behind closed doors. We smile when someone's dog takes a crap on our lawn. We smile when we hate each other. And that morning, I smiled at the man sleeping with my wife. Kurt Davis was jogging shirtless down our street, like he always did on Thursdays. Military cut. Sunglasses. That arrogant gait that screams, I've never lost a fight. He saw me standing by the driveway, holding a mug of coffee. I raised it. He nodded, gave a little wave, kept jogging, like he wasn't walking around with my marriage in his back pocket. I stood there a second longer, watching him disappear around the corner. My hand wasn't even shaking. That surprised me. Inside, Rachel was packing Ivy's lunch, humming to herself like she hadn't broken our wedding vows in someone else's living room. Need anything while I'm out today? She asked. Nope, I said. Just glad to have you here. She smiled at that, walked over and kissed my cheek. You're being sweet lately. Trying to be better, I said. She didn't question it. Because cheaters always think they're the smart ones in the relationship. The ones holding the secret, pulling the strings. But I wasn't stupid. And I wasn't angry. Not in the way she probably feared. I was focused. That day, I bought two things, a set of discreet HD security cameras and a new phone. The cameras were for the house. Exterior only, for now. I didn't need audio. I just needed movement. Patterns. Timing. The phone. That was for what came next. I created a folder titled HOA. It would grow. That night, Rachel said she had another meeting. HOA finance review, she said. Of course it was. Need a ride? I offered. She looked at me sideways. It's 2 blocks. I know. Just thought it'd be nice. I'll walk, she said, then added. I love how attentive you've been lately. Another kiss. Another lie. I watched her walk away, then opened the Nest app. Camera 2 showed her heading east. The direction of Kurt's house. Of course, when I switched to camera 3, mounted low near our mailbox, I caught something else. A woman in yoga pants walking her dog. Stopping. Watching Rachel cross the street. Then shaking her head and continuing on. I didn't recognize her. But that look? That wasn't judgment. That was confirmation. I wasn't the only one who knew. After Rachel got back, she said something about how the finance guy wanted to increase the landscaping budget again. How Kurt had argued to keep things efficient. I nodded. Poured her another glass of wine. She slipped off her heels, let her legs drape over the arm of the couch like she always did after meetings. Maybe you should come to one of these things, she said, swirling her glass. Might be good to have you there. Maybe I will, I said. The next day, I emailed the HOA. Offered to get more involved. Told them I wanted to support my wife's volunteer work, meet more neighbors, lend a hand. Kurt responded personally 3 hours later. Great to hear from you, Ethan. We're always happy to have more community involvement. Let's talk at the next meeting. I read it twice, then smiled. Rachel came in from watering the succulents. Who was that? She asked, nodding at my phone. Kurt, I said. Her face didn't even flinch. Just a blink too long before she responded. Oh, what did he want? Nothing important. She kissed me on the head. I'll start dinner. I watched her walk away. And I knew then, they thought they were in control. But they had no idea who they were playing with. The best way to take down a king? Pretend to serve him. HOA meetings were held in the clubhouse every third Thursday at 7 p.m. Not exactly thrilling stuff, unless you're planning to burn someone's empire from the inside. I showed up 5 minutes early. Pressed shirt. Khakis. A smile I'd practiced in the mirror. Rachel was already there, sitting beside Kurt at the end of the long conference table like they were hosting their own suburban talk show. She was laughing at something he'd said, hand brushing his arm for just a second too long. I stepped in. She jolted like she'd seen a ghost. Ethan, she said, standing up quickly. What are you doing here? I smiled. Didn't you hear? I'm your newest volunteer. Kurt stood, recovered fast, offered his hand. Glad to have you, man, he said, giving me the grip of someone who thinks they're still in charge. Rachel didn't mention you were interested. Well, I like surprises, I said. His smile twitched. The meeting was mostly boring, budgets, parking complaints, someone suggesting we repaint the community sign. I nodded along, took notes, asked a few smart questions, and every time I spoke, I felt both of them watching me. By the time it ended, the mood in the room had shifted. Rachel looked tense. Kurt looked curious, which was exactly what I wanted. As people started to leave, Kurt clapped me on the back. You ever consider joining the board? He asked. We've got an open spot. I raised an eyebrow. That right? Yeah, we could use someone with a business mind. Rachel stood beside him, silent. Sure, I said after a pause. Happy to help. We shook hands. I squeezed harder than I needed to. Kurt grinned. Welcome aboard. Rachel forced a smile. That's great. We'll carpool next time. Nah, I said. Think I'll go solo. You two have your rhythm. Her face twitched. As we walked to the parking lot, she kept glancing at me. You're serious about this HOA thing? She asked. I shrugged. It's our community. Thought it'd be nice to contribute. She nodded slowly. You just caught me off guard. I stopped by my car and leaned against the door. You okay? I asked. Of course. Just tired. Tired of what? There was a long pause. Then she smiled. Don't start playing detective on me, Ethan. I've got enough paranoia from the board already. I held her gaze. Good thing I'm not paranoid, I said. Just observant. She looked away first. That night, I watched the footage from my security cameras again. Same thing. Same walk. Same house. Same betrayal. But now it was different. Now I was inside the system. Now I had access. And when you're trying to take down a king, the first thing you do is earn his trust. Everyone in this neighborhood had secrets. Kurt's were just the juiciest. HOA board members get access to everything. Vendor contracts, complaints, meeting minutes, financial statements, and more importantly, people. Within a week of joining, I had coffee with 3 homeowners, helped one install a Ring doorbell, and took another out to lunch just to talk landscaping. No one suspects the husband of the golden couple, especially not when he's asking questions with a friendly tone and just enough ignorance to seem harmless. You've been here a while, right? I asked our neighbor across the street, Pamela, retired librarian, professional eavesdropper. What do you think of Kurt's leadership? She looked both ways before answering. Depends who you ask, she whispered. My son tried to install solar panels. Kurt denied the request 3 times. Said it didn't fit the neighborhood aesthetic. That was the phrase he used a lot. Neighborhood aesthetic. Control wrapped in courtesy. At the next house over, a young couple named Carlos and Dana told me they once got fined for parking their car on their own driveway because it was too visible from the road. Kurt had taken photos, printed them out, dropped them off personally with a warning. It wasn't an HOA. It was a kingdom, and he was the king. I played dumb, asked questions like I didn't already know where his power came from. It was always the same story. Fear of fines, selective rule enforcement, and always, Kurt at the center of it. I documented everything. Call logs, emails, quotes, even the way he flirted with single moms at pool parties and dismissed other board members like they were interns. One morning, I caught Mrs. Lantham, widow, 60s, big garden hat, trimming her roses a little too close to the sidewalk. Careful, I joked. Kurt might come out with a measuring tape. She laughed, but her hands shook just a little. He already has, she said. 3 times. Then she added, in a quiet voice, you're not the first husband he's disrespected. I blinked. Come again. She looked up, finally meeting my eyes. There was another. Couple streets over. Wife used to help with events too. What happened? They moved. Quietly. Quickly. Did Kurt ever? She cut me off with a look. We all knew. No one said anything. That night, I stood outside my house with a glass of whiskey, watching Kurt's porch light flicker on. Rachel was inside, singing along to some playlist while cooking dinner. Ivy sat cross-legged in the living room, drawing. I had everything a man was supposed to want, and someone else had treated it like an after-hours hobby. I took a sip, checked my watch. 7:42. Right on cue, Rachel's phone buzzed from the kitchen. She glanced at it, smiled to herself, and texted back. She never looked at me, but I saw it all. The pattern, the rhythm, the confidence of people who thought they were safe. They weren't. Not anymore. Security footage doesn't lie, but it can ruin lives if edited just right. I used to believe cameras were for safety. Now I know better. They're for control. My first real break came from a tech buddy of mine, Logan. We went to college together, used to share an apartment back when ramen was a food group. Now he runs a boutique security firm downtown. I need help pulling something from surveillance footage, I told him. And maybe polishing it up. Polishing it up how, he asked. Nothing fake. Just clarity. Enhancements. Multiple angles, synced audio if possible. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You looking to expose something or bury it? Expose, I said, very quietly. Logan didn't ask more. Just nodded. Send what you've got. It took me 2 hours to organize the footage. I pulled clips from my exterior cameras, one of the community clubhouse feeds I had access to as a board member, and even a neighbor's Ring doorbell. Mrs. Lantham had given me her login after complaining about teens stealing garden lights. What Logan sent back 2 days later made my blood run cold and boil at the same time. Split-screen footage. One side, Rachel leaving our house, smiling, wearing a soft blue blouse she'd once worn on our anniversary. The other side, her entering Kurt's house 13 minutes later. And then, them, in his living room. No sound, just grainy intimacy. A hand brushing a leg. Laughter. A slow lean in. Then darkness. Jesus. Logan muttered as he clicked through frames with me. You gonna confront her with this? Eventually, I said, but not before I make it useful. He hesitated. This is pretty damning stuff. I know, but you're not stopping with the affair, are you? I looked at him. There's more. I handed him a second folder. It held footage of Kurt taking envelopes from a landscaping contractor in the community parking lot. Same man he claimed he'd vetted personally for the new lawn upgrade. Cash. No receipts. Logan raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. This neighborhood looks clean, I said, but it's rotting under the paint. I had him create 2 versions of the final edit. 1, a raw, time-stamped, uncut video package labeled Proof, Internal. 2, a shorter, cleaner highlight reel of both the affair and the bribes. Labeled simply, HOA Conduct Concerns. Both sat on a password-locked flash drive that I kept in my safe. But the highlight reel? That one was for mailing. Not yet. Soon. At the next HOA event, Spring Community Social, hosted in the clubhouse, Kurt handed me a beer and slapped me on the back like we were frat brothers. Appreciate you stepping up, he said. Board needs fresh blood. I raised my bottle. Happy to help. Rachel floated nearby, laughing with a woman from 2 streets over. She looked like peace itself. Sun-kissed, drink in hand, wearing that easy confidence of someone who still thinks the world's fooled. Across the room, Carlos caught my eye. Gave a small nod. He'd received his Ring camera footage last night. He knew. And now, slowly, others would too. I wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. I was building a coalition. The perfect neighborhood was about to choke on its own perfection. The entire neighborhood got the truth in their mailboxes, sealed with no return address. They say the pen is mightier than the sword. But in the suburbs, it's the envelope. Manila. Thick. Tucked neatly into every HOA-approved mailbox on Azalea Lane, Dogwood Court, and every smug little street in between. No return address. Just 3 words stamped in bold red on the front. For your eyes only. Inside, 1 USB drive. 1 note. This is what your dues are really funding. Consider your vote wisely. A concerned neighbor. I dropped the packets myself, early on a Sunday morning, hoodie up, headphones in. Anyone watching probably thought I was just another husband trying to hit his 10,000 steps. I timed it perfectly. 2 days before the next HOA meeting. 48 hours of panic. The footage I sent was tight. Clean. Just enough to set fire without showing the matches in my hands. Rachel entering Kurt's house. Kurt laughing, pouring wine. The cash exchange behind the clubhouse. A voiceover clip. Kurt bragging at a barbecue 2 months ago about how he keeps the board in line. No commentary. No accusations. Just truth in digital form. By noon, the text messages started. Rachel, at 12:03 p.m. Something weird is happening. Did you get anything in the mail? Kurt, at 1:27 p.m. We need to talk. Urgently. I didn't answer either of them. Instead, I took Ivy out for ice cream and sat on a park bench while my phone buzzed like it was sitting on a hive. At 4:10 p.m., Carlos called me. You did this, didn't you? He asked. What makes you say that? He laughed. Because it's brilliant. Subtle. Devastating. Kurt's phone has been blowing up. And Rachel? She left the HOA group chat. Interesting, I said. Keep me posted. The next day, I walked out to get the paper and watched as a group of 3 neighbors stood on Kurt's lawn. Arms crossed. Postures tense. He was trying to explain something. His hands moved too much. His mouth moved too fast. Rachel was nowhere in sight. That night, over dinner, she tried to play normal. You feel like everything's weird lately? She asked. I looked up from my pasta. Weird how? Just people acting off. Neighbors. The HOA thread's a mess. You think something happened? I asked wide-eyed. I don't know. She forced a laugh. Maybe just paranoia. I reached over and touched her hand. Well, if anyone can fix it, it's you. She blinked. That night, I poured myself a scotch and watched the neighborhood from the upstairs window. Kurt's porch light flickered off earlier than usual. His front yard, normally pristine, had 2 newspapers on the lawn. Uncollected. Cracks were forming, and I was just getting started. You should run for HOA president, someone joked. I wasn't laughing. The emergency meeting was packed. Standing room only. The kind of turnout you'd expect if someone found termites in the community pool. Kurt stood at the head of the long table, flanked by the usual board members. Nervous, twitchy, suddenly camera shy. Rachel sat beside him, perfectly still. She wore black slacks, a white blouse, and that same artificial calm she used at weddings and funerals. I took a seat in the back. Anonymous, for now. Kurt cleared his throat like he was preparing for war. Some of you may have received a misleading packet, he said, voice tight. We're aware of a coordinated attempt to undermine the HOA's leadership. These videos, these manipulated videos, are being investigated. He scanned the room, dared someone to interrupt. No one did. Yet. Then Mrs. Lantham raised her hand, slow and deliberate. Kurt, is that your living room in the footage? She asked. His jaw twitched. That's not the point. I think it is, Carlos chimed in from the left. Because if it is your living room, and that's Rachel Coleman in it, then this goes beyond an HOA issue. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Rachel didn't flinch. She was good at pretending. Kurt held up a hand. This meeting is about HOA operations. We're not here to gossip like high schoolers. That's when I stood. Then let's talk operations. Heads turned. Rachel stiffened. Kurt, can you explain the undocumented payments to the landscaping vendor? I asked. What are you talking about? $3,200 withdrawn from the discretionary fund. No vote. No receipt. Same vendor seen handing you an envelope in the footage. Gasps. Whispered curses. Kurt's mask cracked. That video is fake, he said, stepping forward. Then release the original board financials, I said. Let the community see for themselves. Someone in the back called out, yeah, show us the books. Rachel turned to him. Ethan, what are you doing? I looked at her, long enough to make her look away. Just contributing, I said. Like I promised. By the time the meeting ended, the room had split wide open. Some defended Kurt. Most didn't. 3 neighbors pulled me aside on the way out. You ever think of running for president? You've got my vote if you do. About time someone cleaned house. And just like that, the joke wasn't a joke anymore. The next day, I filed the paperwork. Kurt called me that night. Blocked number. Big mistake, Ethan, he said. You want to play this game? You better be ready to lose. I smiled into the dark. Oh, I'm not playing. I hung up. 30 minutes later, Rachel came downstairs in her robe. You're running for HOA president? She asked, arms crossed. Yep. She stared at me like she was trying to solve a riddle with her own name in it. Why? I care about this neighborhood, I said simply. Don't you? She didn't answer. She just stood there in the hallway, backlit by the soft glow of our kitchen, realizing, maybe for the first time, that something was shifting, and she wasn't in control anymore. She kissed me goodnight like she hadn't betrayed me, like I didn't know. It's strange how a bed can feel like a battlefield. We used to sleep tangled, legs hooked, her head on my chest, whispered goodnights and soft laughter in the dark. Now, she laid exactly 18 inches away, back turned, breathing steady, too steady, like she was pretending to sleep before I even turned off the lamp. I stared at the ceiling, not blinking, listening to the fan tick. This was our routine now. Polite mornings, careful dinners, silence at night. A perfect couple in every room but the one that mattered. 3 days had passed since I announced my HOA candidacy. Rachel hadn't asked a single follow-up question, but I saw the way she typed furiously into her phone behind the kitchen island. Heard her whispering into it in the garage. Her eyes stopped meeting mine completely. She was scared, not of losing me, but of losing him. That night, her phone lit up just after 11 p.m., face down on the nightstand. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. A minute later, she sighed, loud enough to be heard but soft enough to seem accidental, and got up to get water. I waited. Exactly 60 seconds. Then walked down the hallway in bare feet. She was in the laundry room, of all places. Phone pressed to her ear. Her voice low. No. I know he's acting weird. Like he knows something. A pause. Then she whispered, you need to handle it. Handle it. Not explain it. Not fix it. Handle me. I stepped back into the hallway before she opened the door, slipped into the bathroom, and flushed the toilet for good measure. She padded back into the bedroom like nothing had happened, slipped under the covers. I got into bed 2 minutes later, careful not to look at her. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. Soft, warm, familiar. A lie dressed as a ritual. Good night, babe, she said. Good night. I rolled over, but I didn't close my eyes. I didn't sleep, because the woman lying next to me was no longer my wife. She was a threat. And threats? I don't sleep beside them. I study them. Sometimes a staged text is louder than a scream. It started with a name she didn't recognize. Melissa. I typed it into my phone like I was ordering a hit. Deliberate. Casual. Deceptive. Then I sent myself a text from a spoofing app. Missed you last night. Still thinking about your hands. Melissa face-blowing a kiss. I let it sit on my lock screen until she saw it. It didn't take long. It was a Sunday morning. Ivy was at a friend's house. Rachel was folding laundry on the bed, pretending not to check my phone every time it buzzed. I left it face up on the dresser. Went downstairs for coffee. Waited. 10 minutes later, she came down, too fast, too loud, her hands stiff at her sides. You left your phone upstairs, she said, placing it on the counter like it was radioactive. Thanks, I said, not even glancing at it. She waited. I didn't take the bait. So she did. Who's Melissa? I raised an eyebrow. What? Your phone buzzed. I saw the name. Oh, I said, smirking just enough to twist the knife. Someone from work. That word, someone, was gasoline. Rachel blinked too long. From work. Yeah. I helped her on a project last quarter. She's just flirty. Don't read into it. I could feel her skin burning across the island. I'm not reading into anything, she said, voice tight. Good. I walked past her like nothing had happened. Upstairs, I heard her pacing the hallway. Then the sound of her texting. I checked the cameras. She went straight to the laundry room again, phone in hand. 30 minutes later, she cornered me in the kitchen. Ethan. I turned slowly. Are you cheating on me? She asked. The words were sharp. Accusatory. A test. I met her eyes. And smiled. Would it matter? She blinked like I'd slapped her. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned in, close enough to see the panic behind her pupils. I mean, you'd forgive me, right? I said softly. You believe in forgiveness. I've seen you practice it. Her mouth opened. Closed. No sound. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Vulnerable. Like the image she'd built was cracking in her own hands. She turned away without answering. Slammed the cabinet a little too hard. Opened the fridge, stared inside like she was searching for the version of herself that hadn't been caught. And I walked out of the kitchen without looking back. The paranoia had taken root. And I didn't need to expose her. I just needed her to fear that I might. The vote was unanimous. Kurt was out. I was in. The election wasn't even close. 36 ballots cast. 35 for me. 1 abstained, Kurt. Rachel clapped, but it sounded like a eulogy. Slow. Hollow. Her smile was there, but her eyes weren't backing it up anymore. Kurt didn't speak. He just sat at the head of the table, jaw tight, fists clenched, as if he could crush the votes with his hands. But the neighbors had spoken, and they were done being ruled by a tyrant and loafers. Carlos gave me a handshake and a wink as I stood to speak. Thank you all, I said, scanning the room. This community deserves transparency, respect, and leadership without ego. That starts today. Rachel didn't blink. Kurt did. Because I wasn't just talking to the board, I was talking to them. After the meeting, Kurt cornered me in the parking lot. No hard feelings, right? He asked. His voice was calm. His eyes were not. I smiled. None at all. I admire your service. Really, I do. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You think you're clever. But I've seen men like you before. Weak until they get a taste of power. I leaned in, close enough to smell his cheap cologne and rotting confidence. You're wrong, I whispered. I've always had power. I just never needed to use it, until now. He stared at me like he was trying to decide whether to swing or run. Instead, he just muttered, You'll regret this. I shrugged. I already did. Then I walked past him, into the cool night air, under porch lights that felt warmer than they ever had. When I got home, Rachel was waiting at the dining table. A glass of wine in her hand, still untouched. She looked up as I came in. Well, she said. Well, I echoed. You really did it. I told you I cared about this neighborhood. She nodded slowly. You embarrassed him. Not yet. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? I sat down across from her. There's a difference between exposure and execution, I said. So far, all I've done is open a few blinds. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised the wine to her lips. You're not the man I married, she said. No, I replied. I'm the man you underestimated. I stood, kissed the top of her head like a husband should, and walked away like a stranger would. She sat there alone, glass in hand, future unraveling. New rules. No special treatment. No secrets. The first thing I did as HOA president, I changed the locks on the clubhouse. The second, I changed the passwords on everything: cloud storage, budget portals, vendor contacts. Kurt's access was revoked within the hour. He found out when he tried to email the board and got a bounce back. Unauthorized. Contact current administration. He did. For times. I didn't answer once. Instead, I called an audit. The official excuse? Financial clarity for the upcoming fiscal quarter. The real reason? To peel back every lie he'd ever buried under HOA-approved jargon. And it worked. Within 2 weeks, we found $11,000 in unapproved payments to emergency contractors, a landscaping company owned by his cousin, inflated quotes, overpaid invoices, a storage rental where nothing was stored, except maybe secrets. I didn't send it to the board. I sent it to the neighborhood. PDFs, itemized, bullet points with red highlights. The email was anonymous, of course, just like the first USB, but the subject line was loud enough. What your HOA president didn't want you to see. By the end of that week, I'd received 15 private messages from residents, each one thanking me, each one adding fuel to the fire. But that wasn't the moment that broke Kurt. That came from a small white envelope, dropped in my mailbox by someone I still haven't identified. No name, no return address, just a USB inside. Again, I knew what it was before I even plugged it in. Same grainy footage, different location, a cheap motel, off the highway, one camera in the parking lot, another in the hallway, and in both, Rachel and Kurt. She was wearing the same cardigan she'd claimed was stained with pasta sauce. He was wearing the same smug grin he always wore after a board meeting. I watched them check in. I watched her hesitate, just for a second, before stepping inside the room. And I watched them not come out for 2 hours. That night, I didn't say a word. I came home, ate dinner, watched TV with Ivy, kissed Rachel goodnight. But inside me, a new fire was burning. Because now, it wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just politics. It was humiliation. And I don't let people get away with that. Not in public. Not in private. Not anymore. I slid the divorce papers across the table like a resignation letter. It was the mid-year HOA board meeting. Full attendance. Full tension. I'd waited for this moment. Built toward it. Layer by layer. Like laying bricks in a fireplace I planned to light from the inside. Rachel was seated 2 chairs away from me. Neutral blouse. Gold earrings. Not a hair out of place. She looked like she belonged there. Like she still mattered. Kurt was across the room. Pale. Silent. Leaning back with the kind of confidence that screams, I still think I'm untouchable. We made it through the usual business. Trash pickup. Pool rules. Volunteer rotations. Then I tapped my pen twice. Everyone looked at me. I have one more item, I said. Carlos raised an eyebrow. What's that? I reached into my briefcase. Pulled out a folder. Set it on the table. Community values, I said calmly. Transparency. Integrity. Accountability. I opened the folder. Inside, printed screenshots from the motel footage. A summary of Kurt's financial misconduct. And on top of it all, divorce papers. Rachel's name in bold at the top. Signed. Dated. Already filed. The room went dead silent. Rachel stared at the folder like it had a pulse. What is this? She asked, voice flat. I figured if we're going to clean up this neighborhood, I said, sliding the folder across the table toward her, I should probably start at home. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just blinked. Once. Twice. Then Kurt stood up. You have no right. Sit down, I said, without raising my voice. He did. The board members didn't look at either of them. Not anymore. They were looking at me. Not like a man unraveling, but like a man rising. Rachel finally picked up the divorce papers. Her hand shook just enough to betray the calm she was trying to wear. You're doing this here? She whispered. I leaned forward. I'm doing this now. Because I don't want to lie to these people the way you lied to me. Her jaw clenched. But she didn't deny it. How could she? The footage was already in the hands of the board. Not all of it. Just enough. Kurt's motel check-in. Rachel's entry. 2 timestamps. 1 truth. I stood. This marriage is over, I said, clear and steady. Just like your influence in this neighborhood. Then I walked out of the room. Didn't wait for applause. Didn't need it. Because some victories are quiet. They don't need cheers. Just a signature, a smirk, and the sound of betrayal collapsing in real time. He built this neighborhood on control. I burned it down with a smile. The footage leaked by morning. Not from me. Not directly. But that's the thing about secrets. They rot, and the smell always gets out. By 9 a.m., it was in the community group chat. By noon, it was the topic at the HOA Facebook page, Nextdoor thread, and every whispered conversation from Dogwood Court to Maple Bend. The president who once fined someone $50 for leaving their trash bins out past 7 p.m. The same man now caught in grainy black and white, ushering a married woman into a motel room off I-75. The board called an emergency vote. Not to discuss it. Not to clarify. To remove him. Unanimous. Kurt didn't show up. Rachel didn't either. But I watched from my porch as his house told the story for him. No flag out front. No porch light. No car in the driveway. A silence that wasn't peaceful, but punished. Neighbors who once waved now walked by without a glance. The woman who used to host wine nights crossed the street when she passed his place. Power is a strange thing. It evaporates quickly when the fear is gone. One night later, I saw a moving truck in his driveway. Didn't even call ahead. Just showed up like someone skipping town before the storm hits. I walked across the street. He was by the truck, lifting a box labeled office. He looked older. Not aged. Exposed. Like a man finally standing without the shadow he used to hide behind. He saw me. Didn't say anything. Just kept moving boxes. You know, I said. You could have just been a decent man. He laughed bitterly. You think you're better? No, I said. Just more patient. He stopped. Set the box down. You really think you won? He asked. I took a breath. Looked around at the houses he used to lord over. At the street he ruled like a HOA dictator. Then I looked him dead in the eyes. You're moving out of a neighborhood you used to control, with your reputation in a ditch and nobody left to defend you. I smiled. Yeah, I think I did. He said nothing after that. Just picked up the box and disappeared inside. Later that night, Ivy asked me what happened to Mr. Kurt. Just someone who forgot that people remember how you treat them, I said. She nodded. Then she went back to drawing with chalk on the driveway. A sun. A house. A tree. No HOA sign. Just home. Her friends stopped calling. Her calendar stayed empty. Just like her future with me. The day after Kurt's U-Haul disappeared around the bend, Rachel came home from yoga and stood in the kitchen for a long time. Just stood there. Hands on the marble island like she was steadying herself. Like the ground wasn't what it used to be. Everyone was cold, she said. Even Brittany. I said nothing. Just stirred my coffee. She barely looked at me. Rachel continued, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. We've done wine night every month for 3 years. I organized her baby shower. Maybe she's busy, I said, knowing full well Brittany had posted a photo that morning. Coffee and croissants on her porch with 3 other neighborhood moms. Rachel wasn't invited. She wasn't mentioned. She wasn't anything anymore. She waited for me to offer sympathy, forgiveness, rescue. But I let the silence stretch. She filled it the only way she knew how. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand, she said softly. It was never supposed to go that far with Kurt. I looked at her. You don't get to redefine betrayal just because it spiraled. She didn't reply, and I didn't know her more. For weeks, it was like watching a house sink slowly into the ground. The text slowed, then stopped. The invites disappeared. The smiles across the street, ones she used to collect like trophies, now vanished before she reached the sidewalk. Even Ivy noticed. Why doesn't Ms. Rachel get asked to stuff anymore? She whispered one night after dinner. I paused. Because people change, I said carefully. And when they do, sometimes the people around them take a step back. Rachel stopped wearing her bright cardigans. Stopped jogging with the other moms. She wore muted tones now. Hair tied up. Head down. She'd walk through the neighborhood like a shadow of herself. Like a ghost in yoga pants. And the more invisible she became out there, the more desperate she became inside. You've made your point, she said one night. You've humiliated me enough. I didn't even look up from my book. I haven't done anything, I said. You lit the match. The neighborhood just watched the fire. She wanted the last word. I could feel it. But she didn't take it. She just went upstairs and closed the door quietly. 2 days later, I threw a house party. Invites went out to the entire block. Long games. Open bar. Catered sliders. A bounce house for the kids. Everyone came. Everyone but her. She stayed upstairs the entire night. I saw her once, through the bedroom window. Just standing there behind the curtain, watching the people who used to orbit her now orbit me. That's the thing about exile. You don't always leave the place. Sometimes, the place just stops recognizing you. This neighborhood deserves honesty. Starting now. The annual HOA meeting was held in the same room where Kurt once ruled. Polished wood table, stacks of agendas, little paper name placards no one ever reads. But this time, everything felt cleaner. Carlos sat to my left, now vice president. Dana across from him, handling communications. The seats were filled with people who actually wanted to be here, for the right reasons. No egos, no shadows, just neighbors. I stood up without a gavel, without a speechwriter, without Rachel. She didn't show. Of course she didn't. She was still technically a resident, until the papers finalized, but she'd become more myth than member now. A name whispered with a shake of the head and a warning glance. I looked out over the room, saw the same people who used to see me as Rachel's husband. Now, they listened when I spoke. Before we dive into the agenda, I said, I want to say something simple. The room went still. This neighborhood deserves honesty. Starting now. A pause. Not dramatic. Just true. I looked at every face that had smiled politely at my wife while she cheated, and every face that had chosen me once they knew. We've had a tough year, I continued. We've seen what happens when people in power abuse trust, when private lives turn public, and when appearances crack wide open. But what matters most isn't what fell apart. I looked down, then back up. It's what we build next. Silence, then nods, then something I didn't expect. Real warmth. Not sympathy, not pity, just respect. The kind that isn't earned by status or charm. The kind you earn the hard way. I wrapped the meeting in 30 minutes. Kept it efficient, transparent, clean. And when it ended, I shook every hand that reached for mine. Outside, the sun was setting behind the row of perfect houses. Lawns trimmed, porches swept. Peaceful. Rachel's car was gone. The moving van would come next week. She hadn't told me where she was going. She didn't need to. She'd become a cautionary tale here. A rumor wrapped in regret. And Kurt, he hadn't been seen in over a month. Maybe he'd started over somewhere else. But not here. Not ever again. I stood on the clubhouse steps, hands in my pockets, watching the people walk home. For once, there were no lies between us. No secrets. Just clean streets and clear skies.